everyone, welcome back. So today I want to talk about some religious and mythical ties that I see in Romance Dawn. So first, I think I want to talk about the most obvious one, which is the gum gum fruit. So in the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve live in Eden. There's only one rule, that they can't eat from the tree of knowledge. And what do? Of course, they eat from the tree of knowledge. They eat this fruit, and this is the first sin that pulls them away from God. So it gives them basically all of the awareness that God has, but at a cost. So now they are banished from Eden, and they are no longer innocent. So this is clearly a parallel with Luffy, who of course is just innocent and curious, and he eats the devil's fruit. He eats the gum gum fruit, and while he does gain power, he gains superhuman power, which we can kind of liken to being godlike. He can no longer go to the sea anymore, and so I think that's the most clear parallel in Romance Dawn, especially because the name of the fruit is the devil's fruit, and the serpent that tempted Adam and Eve is very clearly a symbolism for Satan. So after Luffy's fall, after he eats the gum gum fruit, after he's a part of Shanks' crew, and he starts running into different people, we clearly see that there are examples of good and bad, but it's not as clear cut as saying pirates are bad, Marines are good, because we see a lot of examples of good pirates, such as Shanks, and we see a lot of examples of Marines being bad, such as Captain Morgan. And so I think it makes us question, like, what does good and evil really mean? And I also want to tie to mythology. So in Greek mythology, Prometheus steals fire from the gods and he gives it to humanity. And this is done in the name of compassion. However, the gods don't see it that way. So basically, Zeus chains Prometheus up to a rock, and he has an eagle come down every day to tear out and eat his liver, which is disgusting. Now I want to bring up romanticism again. I know, again, romanticism. But in romanticism, Prometheus is kind of like a cautionary tale. So yes, Prometheus brings fire as an act of compassion to humanity, but it's also kind of the downfall of humanity, because with fire comes weapons, greed, war. Of course, it can bring us warmth. Of course, it can cook our food, but it can also burn our house down. And the devil fruit can also kind of be seen as fire in a way, because it is transformative for Luffy. It gives him these powers, but he is going to get burned by it very clearly because he can no longer go into the sea. Now, my favorite part of talking about this is the birds. So Luffy and Zoro are floating along in need of a navigator, and suddenly a giant bird swoops down. It's very comical. It grabs Luffy and carries him away, very kind of slapstick style. And it's easy to laugh, but I think the scene is really deep when we connect it to mythology and religion around the world. So in many religions and myths around the world, birds are always considered like the messengers. In the Bible, Noah releases a dove after the flood, and the bird comes back with an olive branch, which signals that the waters have receded, so the world can begin new again. In Greek mythology, Hermes wears wings on his feet, and he is responsible for carrying these divine messages between Olympus and Earth. There's also Odin's ravens in Norse mythology. We have the hoopoe bird in Islam, which is a messenger between King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And although it's not religion or mythology, we can even look in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series and see that the eagles that kind of rescue Gandalf and Frodo and Sam, they are representative of kind of the divine intervention, which is assisting when kind of all hope is lost. So across cultures, birds are very important messengers. They are very important agents of divine intervention, and we very clearly see this when the giant bird picks Luffy up and drops him exactly where he needs to be, because he and Zoro are talking about needing a navigator because they're just kind of floating around the ocean, and Luffy is dropped right to Nami, who is an excellent navigator and is going to be a very key part of Luffy's crew. Now, I also want to talk about this idea of Luffy being brought through the sky, because of course the sea is a really big part of Luffy's journey, but I think that the sky is almost an even bigger, more important part of Luffy's destiny, because he is not brought through the ocean like he arrived to Kobe through the barrel. And from a literary lens, the sky really represents kind of like this larger point of view that can see everything at once. And birds kind of moving through that sky are kind of like this link between the blindness of mortals, of humans, and this kind of larger divine sight. And in the sky is the sun. Duh, science lesson for today. But I want to really talk about the sun as well, because every myth, we get this contrast of like lightness and darkness. Luffy almost becomes a sort of like solar hero in Romance Dawn, who is responsible for bringing the light back to Earth. And we see this obviously with the title, Romance Dawn. So the dawn is the beginning of the day, and the sun rises in dawn. And so I think the sun is really, really important in One Piece. So in Shinto myth, Amaterasu, which is the goddess of the sun, she hides herself in a cave after a fight with her brother Susanoo. The other gods eventually lure her out with music and laughter, and after she emerges, the light returns and life begins again. And I think Luffy kind of acts like those gods that lured Amaterasu out of the cave. So his bright spirit is kind of helping other people to come out of their own cave. So we see this with Kobe, who kind of gained the conviction that he needed to go and join the Navy. We see this with Zoro, who kind of gained this conviction to fight back against Captain Morgan and escaping so that he can fulfill his destiny instead of just sitting there and letting them kill him. So I think that Luffy is going to continue to be this kind of solar hero that is responsible for bringing light to other people. And the last symbolism that I really want to bring up is Luffy's hat. Luffy's hat kind of symbolizes a few things to me. One is that treasure is not just glitter and gold. So the fact that Luffy's hat, which is kind of like a crown for the King of Pirates, it's not an actual crown made of gold, it's made of straw. It's symbolizing that treasure, it does not have to be valuable to another person as long as it has an important meaning to you. Second, I think the hat kind of symbolizes this passing of a torch and also inheriting a belief from your father before you or your ancestors before you. In the Arthurian legend, we see this with Excalibur, so only the worthy person capable of wielding Excalibur is able to pull it out of the stone. And so in this way, when Shanks puts the hat on Luffy's head, it's not just a beloved object that he's giving to Luffy, but rather the belief that he can actually follow in the footsteps of Shanks. But the third really, and I think the most important thing about the hat is that it is made of straw. After Amaterasu emerges from the cave, the gods stretch this rope across the entrance. It's called a shimenawa, and this is kind of preventing her from going back into the cave. So essentially the shimenawa protects the light. It protects that border between the light and the dark, and that rope is made of straw. So the fact that Shanks' hat is straw, and it is kind of giving Luffy this hope and courage to continue to go into the light and to become the greatest king of the pirates and follow in Shanks' footsteps. So Shanks' straw hat kind of becomes Luffy's personal shimenawa. So even though the sea rejects him, the hat reminds him that he needs to keep shining and bringing the light to other people. So I have one more part that I am going to make, and this is going to focus on the women in Romance Dawn and a little bit going into Orange Town. So please stay tuned for that and let me know in the comments what you think about this video, this deep dive. What are your thoughts? What are your comments? I would love to hear everything.